In our 9 News Survey USA poll of likely Denver voters, in collaboration with Denver Gazette and MSU Denver, likely voters in Denver identified homelessness as a top priority. So we're going to hear from everybody on this. But first, let's show the folks at home some of the specific policy positions that you've taken. Then we'll get into details. Most of you here tonight have said that you will enforce Denver's urban camping ban, which is currently done through sweeps of encampments. That's Kelly Brough, Chris Hansen, Mike Johnston, Debbie Ortega, Trinidad Rodriguez, Andy Rougeau, and Thomas Wolf. 4 of you have said you will not enforce Denver's urban camping ban and will not continue the sweeps. Lisa Calderon, Al Gardner, Leslie Herod, and Terrence Roberts. And then let's talk about who here said that they will take it a step further and arrest people solely for violating the urban camping ban if they refuse offers of shelter and treatment. That would be Kelly Brough, Trinidad Rodriguez, Andy Rougeau, and Thomas Wolf. A majority of you have said you will not have people arrested solely for violating the urban camping ban. That would be Lisa Calderon, Al Gardner, Chris Hansen, Leslie Herod, Mike Johnston, and Terrence Roberts. And Debbie Ortega has refused to say whether she will have people arrested solely for violating the urban camping ban. Debbie Ortega, this is an understandably difficult issue, but every other person up here has come to a conclusion and shared it with voters. Would you like to tell voters tonight whether you will have Denverites arrested solely for violating the urban camping ban?
My answer is no, because this is a complex issue. Our homeless population is as diverse as the rest of our community, and there is no one-size-fits-all. I think we need to meet people where they're at with different options to meet their needs. And we've talked about treatment beds, the need for those, and things like single-room occupancy housing for individuals. But I think this is, again, a complex situation that doesn't have just a yes or a no answer to solve how we're going to get at addressing the needs of the individuals who are challenged to survive in our community. And affordable housing is absolutely a critical part of what we need to bring online to address the needs of so many of these individuals, helping get them back to employment. We have to have an exit plan for individuals that are staying in our facilities, because our general fund will not be able to pick up the tab at the end of the day when these federal dollars expire.
Thank you. Mike Johnston, you are making a pledge that no one else in this race is making, to end homelessness in Denver in your first term. No major American city has ever done this. I want to have a broader conversation about this because Kelly Brough and Debbie Ortega, you were part of the Hickenlooper administration's efforts to try 20 years ago with Denver's Road Home. So we'd like to hear from the 3 of you first on this topic, along with anybody else who feels like they strongly disagree and wants to be heard. Mike Johnston, how will you do what no major American city has done and do it in just 4 years?
Yeah, I think the benefit of this is we've learned a lot from the successes and the failures of the last 20 years. People have been trying hard and been finding real innovations right here in Denver. And so I think we know a couple of things that really work, and these are pressure tested to work. First, as we know, we have to get people access to actual housing. That has to be housing we can build quickly and that provides safety and stability and dignity. That's why what I've proposed are micro communities where you can build tiny homes, 40 or 50 tiny homes. People can have access to safe, stable care. You can then wrap around the services in those communities people need, like mental health support, addiction treatment, workforce training, long-term housing support, and we know people are much more successful in those kind of communities. And third and finally, what we've learned is people, if we want to respect the way community is built among folks who are unhoused, this is an innovation Houston discovered, you want to actually allow people to move by community. And so if you go to one person in an encampment and try to move them on their own, they may not be likely to go. When you open a micro community with 40 or 50 units, and you can go to 2 or 3 blocks of encampments and say now folks can move together to a new community that provides more safety and stability, that works. And I would say the data is clear on partnerships where we've done this. A year later, 86% of the people that have moved are still housed. So we know there is a path to make this successful. We just have to do it at scale with the innovations the city has helped develop.
Thank you.
Kelly Brough, your boss at the time, Mayor John Hickenlooper, said when he said his goal was to end homelessness, he now says it was just aspirational, not realistic. You said when you worked as his chief of staff, you worked on it as though it was a realistic goal. So is it realistic for Denver to end homelessness now within 4 years?
I don't think so, no. I mean, I think part of this is telling the truth. What we really have to do is build a safety net that catches people when things go wrong. And if we build that safety net right, I think we can get people the support and services they desperately need. But I think we have to think about that differently. And frankly, that'd be one of the lessons I took away from that experience.
So what does Mike Johnston have completely wrong?
Well, I think to be able to, is my time up? Did you just hear that? I think one of the challenges is I don't think it's as simple as micro units. I think we're talking about people who need serious support from a mental health perspective and an addiction perspective. And I think this is where we have to focus our resources as a region to build the kind of facilities we need long term. I think we have people who are chronically homeless who need long-term supportive care. And I think that's the other part of what we have to build.
I'll give you a quick rebuttal here.
Great, yeah. I agree with Kelly. I think one of the things we do need is long-term supportive care, and that's why linked to this plan, what I've said is that I would take 2 pods of the county jail and convert those, one into long-term inpatient mental health support, which we don't have in the city right now, and one into long-term inpatient addiction-based treatment. So for the folks that have the most profound needs and are still facing repeated criminal charges around those needs, you can get them into a place where they would actually get treatment long-term, get healthy, get stabilized, get transitioned back to the community, and I think that is an important part of the puzzle we'd have to solve.
Thank you. Debbie Ortega, I'm coming to you next here. You've heard both ends of the spectrum now. We're ending homelessness, and it's not realistic to say we're ending homelessness in four years. You were the first head of Denver's Commission on Homelessness 20 years ago. So is the problem easier or harder to solve now? And what do you think about the pledge to end homelessness?
So it is harder to solve now just because we have more people, and we need to have a lot more options. Like I said, there is no one size fits all. I think the fact that we've been housing people for 2 years and we have not assisted them with getting back to work, that's a big part of being successful. I saw that when we got people back to work under the Denver Road Home program, and we now have 200 people working in downtown hotels, it changed everything for those individuals. They were successful getting into housing. We housed 1,000 people by working with faith organizations across the Denver metro community that sponsored a family by offsetting the cost of first month's rent and deposit. These are programs we could bring back, but I think we absolutely need to have the housing options. That's why I think single room occupancy units, the fact that we've been doing the tiny homes or the sanctioned safe outdoor spaces have been part of that solution. But we have to have different spectrums of housing price points that don't exist in our market today.
Thank you, Deb.
Trinidad Rodriguez, you said that you would forcibly institutionalize most of Denver's homeless population, as many as 1,000 people, and hold them against their will for months of treatment in what you're calling a field hospital. Civil rights attorney Joe Salazar called that an internment camp, said it's illegal. RTD's director called you a fascist. Why do you believe your plan is legal and moral?
Because under Title 27 of the state's Colorado revised statutes, there is the power for governments and certain organizations to actually intervene when people are of danger to themselves and others, and when they're clinically diagnosed with substance and mental health disorders. This exists in state law today. This is not a pie-in-the-sky fantasy. And I respectfully disagree with those 2 individuals you mentioned. This is not an internment camp. This is a place where we can provide the standard of care for healing for people who are suffering and dying on our streets today. And it is the right thing to do. It's the only right thing to do. The power and strength and potency of our current formulas for methamphetamine that are flooding our streets, and the absolutely vicious nature of fentanyl and the analog drugs is causing people to experience extraordinary risk. When I went on Kyle on Friday, shortly thereafter, I got an email from a mother. She said she was a desperate mother. She told me about her daughter, who's 32 years old, who's been living on the streets for 8 years, being constantly abused and raped while she's pumped with drugs. That is what I'm looking to fight. I'm looking to save lives.
If people are already saying that it's illegal, which is hinting at the potential for legal lawsuits, why not take that money and spend it on housing and allocate it for housing, which homeless advocates have said is what will be needed to help get the city out of this crisis?
They're wrong. It's not illegal. It's just not illegal. There's Title 27 of the Colorado revised statutes provides for an ability to place people under a 72-hour hold, and then with the sign-off of a clinician, with the opinion of a clinician, a diagnosis of mental health or substance use disorder that meets the standard of a short-term certification for short-term treatment. That provides a 3-month window to provide the standard of care treatment for people who are of grave danger and risk to themselves and others.
Lisa Calderon, I saw you shaking your head in disagreement. You want to take 30 seconds and explain why?
This is why people with a little bit of knowledge can be dangerous. There's a reason why we have a separation of branches. The judiciary, the executive, and the legislative. Judges determine involuntary commitment, not the executive branch. There is a process for taking away people's constitutional rights and human rights. So there's that. Regarding Mike, it's just naive. I mean, focusing on these temporary solutions. My plan has been co-created with unhoused people, and so it's interesting hearing people who have no experience working with unhoused people about what's best for them.
Thank you. Trinidad Rodriguez, if you'd like to respond.
So in my experience, 25 years working to tackle homelessness and the vagaries, the severe dangers of people living and dying on our streets, there is Title 27 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. Do you agree that's the case?
Trinidad, how you're applying it, you're using yourself in place of a
I'm
judge.
not using myself.
So there's laws. There are many laws to do a lot of things with people, right? Mm-hmm. But you can't oppose them. Like, a mayor is not an emperor. So you have to go through a legal process.
I never said I was.
And they have a right to an attorney before being institutionalized. You're skipping over all of that process.
I'm not.
Because you think you know what's best.
No, I'm acknowledging that there are guardrails around how people's rights get protected while we try and protect them from dying. While we try and protect them from the most severe and brutal experiences on our streets.
Rounding
it's
people
a fantasy,
up,
and it's a fantasy to talk about drugs not being a severe part of the problem. So I'm asking you, why wouldn't you help somebody through a severe crisis like
Thank you both.
Why wouldn't you do that?
I have done that work.
Well, then, why?
And that's not how the work gets done.
Trinidad Rodriguez, just a moment.
Thomas Wolfe. Please.
Please.
Yeah, so have I.
Thomas Wolfe, when you've answered questions about homelessness, and even in your introduction today, you've talked about property values, the cleanliness of the city, safety. You even mentioned this today, empathy for teachers. What about the people experiencing homelessness? Do you care about them or just getting them out of the way?
You wouldn't be in this race if you didn't. I mean, call me the big bad wolf because I want to confront this problem. I'll wear it, but I can prove to you why it's good for the people individually and it's good for the city. The point over here is we've seen this person that has their head in a trash can. They haven't bathed in however long. They don't know what their name is. They don't know what date it is. Then they walk right out into Broadway, regardless of what's going on. I think the medical term is capacity. That person is not. When they're confronted now, it obviously needs to be a triage between clinicians, social workers, and backup from police officers, for sure. So what happens is they're likely going to be delivered to Denver Health, okay? And then there's a medical approach to whether they've lost capacity to care for themselves. And then the problem is there isn't enough capacity at Denver Health, so Denver Health doesn't know what to do with them. Your city needs to step in. I've suggested that we use surplus of facilities that the city currently has, so we can immediately do this. To not do it is the most inhumane thing.
But with respect, I asked you about, you just gave me process, and I asked you if you care about these people, but you gave me the process. So do you care about the people, or do you just want to get them out of the way?
I'm going to solve. Well, if they were out in a 20 below zero, and I have a path to get them to shelter, does that not show I care for them? They're currently still out.
I care. I
mean,
for them.
there's 2,000 people in encampments in Denver this evening. Okay, would it be more humane to get them into Denver property or not? I'm proposing that we do that, and we do it yesterday. We've been 3 years in this crisis, and it's compounding against us.
Thank you.
Andy Rougeau, I'm hoping that voters can learn a bit more tonight about your philosophy about how we assist folks experiencing homelessness beyond your talking points of enforce the camping ban, hire 400 police officers, fight for Denver's future. What is your plan to assist folks who are unhoused into finding stability and eventually self-sufficiency?
Yes. So it's looking at what is the underlying cause for someone who's unsheltered in our streets. And I have a beautiful park right by my house. And I've gone out there with my now 3-year-old in my arms, walked out the back gate, and seen a man with his pants around his ankles using it as a restroom, defecating along the fence line. Now, that man is someone's son. That man might be somebody's father. And that man is dealing with a fentanyl addiction issue or other drug addiction issue. So the actual compassionate thing to do for that person is to get them clean. The compassionate thing to do for that person is to reconnect them to family. The compassionate thing to do to that person is allow them to get back to the point where they can hold a job, where they can reconnect with family, where they have a chance to build a future again. So that's why enforcing the camping ban is that critical first step for getting people into the mental health and drug addiction services the city already provides. Because we spend, based off the Common Sense Institute, between $30,000 and $70,000 per homeless person right now.
So again, sir, the question was, what are you going to do beyond enforce the camping ban? And you just explained your philosophy of why you will enforce the camping ban and said nothing about how you help people transition into stability and then self-sufficiency.
Yes, because,
what are your plans for that?
Because I'm saying the underlying cause is a drug addiction or a mental health issue. So
do you have plans?
Yes. So
what are they?
I'm clearly speaking them to you right now, Kyle. So the most important issue is getting people off the streets into those services in the first place. Because right now there is capacity. Go to Step Denver, a great organization downtown. They will tell you they have beds available. That's an organization where you can walk off the street, they will get you clean, and they'll get you a job. They'll reconnect you to your family. So the issue is not a lack of services by the city. It's not a lack of dollars. It's a lack of political will to enforce our camping ban, to follow the method that's proven successful, because we have seen it successful. We've seen it successful in cities like Colorado Springs, where aggressive enforcement of a sit-lie ordinance combined with an excellent Colorado Springs rescue mission with wraparound services, which Denver already has. We have great NGOs here who are working hard. So the key thing missing right now is enforcing the camping ban to fight for Denver's future.
Thank you.
Correction, Step 13, they're great.
Al Gardner.
They only serve men.
Al Gardner, you had a refreshing, I don't know answer in your one-on-one with Kyle about how to address homelessness. Now, honestly, I've said I don't know to questions he's asked. It's a fair answer. However, everyone else here on stage has not said, I don't know.
Yeah.
Why does that not disqualify you when everyone else here has some sort of concrete plan?
Yeah, because I'm not afraid to be honest, and at worst, at best, saying that we can do things in a short amount of time is ambitious. At worst, it's pandering. So we know that there are a lot of systems, there are a lot of things in place in Denver, a lot of organizations. I've sat down with Homeless Leadership Coalition with a lot of folks that have a lot of great services, and we have to try to figure out how that looks. So my I don't know is more akin to what is the best idea, because I don't believe we've arrived at that yet. When I listen down the line, Trinidad's idea, we talk about internment. Essentially, the country's tried that before, and it did work out well. Try to answer the question around what Wolf has just said over there. I can answer that question very easily. I care. If I go further down the line and I look at what Andy has just said regarding of where he would put people, and he doesn't know the guy using the restroom behind his house. When I look at that individual, I don't look at someone trying to offend me. I look at that as somebody who's losing their dignity because they're unhoused.
I look at that as someone who's exposing himself to my 3-year-old daughter, and is not helpful to that man. That man is not being helped by using a public instead of using a public restroom that's immediately across the street from my house, using the yard. The compassionate thing for that person, again, who is a son for sure, could be a father, is to get that person clean and help, not to allow him to do that.
Thank you, Andy Rougeau. Yes, your plan was referred to as an internment camp again, so you're welcome to respond.
A, that's not my plan. B, I take severe offense to the idea that people who are experiencing actual health crises and are of danger to themselves or others are like Japanese people. And so your facility with sort of taking these concepts and throwing them around without even knowing why you got into this race, Al, is just completely inappropriate.
Yeah. Taking someone without their will,
It's in the state law.
Telling them what's best for them is paternalistic at best, and is mean-spirited at worst.
So I demand an apology to people, the Japanese Americans.
You can demand what you would like, but what I understand is that doing that to someone involuntarily is not what we're about in this country, and it's not what we're about in this city.
You just admitted you know nothing about homelessness.
Thank you both.
Thanks for your opinion.
Question for Terrence Roberts. You said that people experiencing homelessness don't want to live in tough sheds. Whose plan are you talking about with the tough sheds? And then how would you obtain a better type of transitional shelter that we can scale to the level that we need?
I'm definitely talking about Mike's plan. Do those things even have plumbing? Do they have AC? I don't know. It's a tough shed, okay? What homeless people are saying is they do not want to live in shelters, but shout out to our shelters that are doing the work. They're not failing, they're overwhelmed. What homeless people are saying is they want house keys. They don't want to live in a shed with 50 other people in other sheds without plumbing, without AC, without heat. If we create a public banking system like other municipalities, we can add that money to our public safety dollars or to our general fund to make sure that we can buy or retrofit more public housing. Also, we can have safe encampments that do have warm showers, that have menstrual products, hygiene products, that keep people safe with safe lighting. We need to make Denver a 24-hour city. There are better plans than putting people in tough sheds or just continuing to build affordable housing that is not being lived in because people cannot afford our affordable housing.
At the risk of getting us sued by the people who own Tough Shed, would you like to explain in 30 seconds whether or not you intend to put unsheltered people in tough sheds?
They are not. They are not tough sheds. They are, in fact, tiny homes that have heating, that have access to showers, that have access to kitchens, that have all the wraparound services people need, and they are a transitional plan. That's right. But they are far better than what we know is happening now, which is leaving folks to sleep in tents where you have people that are freezing to death, which is what happened 2 weeks ago in downtown Denver.
Thank you.
But better for who? So when you talk to unhoused people and you have to share bathrooms and you have to share kitchens, they don't have homes. I agree with Terrence. They want house keys. And so your continued emphasis on temporary solutions, as if everybody wants to go there, that's why I co-created my plan with unhoused people who say they don't want that long term, they don't want that short term. They want actual homes, which your plan doesn't address. It's thousands short of the kinds of homes that we need.
It does address it. So two things. One is, what we know is we can't build everyone a single-family home because that takes 3 years and $500,000. People don't have 3 years to wait. And
that's
so
why we're going to do master leasing.
What we do want is to be able to begin to build the capacity for long-term housing. That's why my affordable housing plan has called for building 25,000 permanent units where people could move into that housing. What we know is right now people need access to safe, stable, protected housing. And that does mean not living in a tent, not living in an encampment. And you need to do something we can build quickly.
They don't want curfews. They don't want to be regulated. They want to be able to go and come just like you do.
That's correct.
And have a nice place to sleep at night, just like you do, without somebody lording over them about what they can and can't do and who can and can't visit them.
No version of that.
We want to bring in a couple of other people who haven't been heard on this topic yet.
Chris Hansen, your approach to housing includes addressing the missing middle. You talk about dedicating more of the budget toward shoring up housing security for families at risk of losing their houses. How much of the budget should be dedicated to helping those living on the streets versus those on the verge of losing their home? And does that require moving around the money that the city is already spending or new funds?
Yeah, I think it likely means moving around the city money that's already being spent. So my advertisement I recently put out emphasizes that we're spending $250 million this year on homelessness services. Much of that money is being spent on some short-term solutions that are not showing long-term payoff. So I've called for an immediate audit of the full slate of spending that we're doing because we need to focus on the models that we're seeing success. And this is one of the things I pioneered at the state level using evidence-based budgeting at the Joint Budget Committee. And we made some sizable investments in last year's state budget. I led on those because Denver needed help, like the Ridgeview facility east of town, where you have stable housing with the wraparound services people need on the mental health and addiction side. The same thing, ran a bill last year to help the nonprofits accelerate expansion of their capacity so that nonprofits can build for men, for women, and for families. We're short of that right now. The state is helping to make those investments to shore up those weaknesses. Those are the models that work. I've studied what happened in San Antonio and in other places around the country. It's stable housing with wraparound services. That's a long-term result.
Thank you. Leslie Herod, your plan to address homelessness focuses on making people an offer of shelter that you think is going to be so good they won't refuse it, that they'll take you up on the deal. Because you're saying that you will not back that up with encampment sweeps or arrests. How do you accomplish the scale of shelter and housing that Denver so far has not been able to accomplish with so much money spent?
I'm glad you asked that question, and I just want to first acknowledge the tension, but also the lack of hope on this stage right now. We shouldn't let any of us knock the hope out of us or out of Denver. We can make sure that Denverites are safe, housed, and secure. In fact, if you go to my website right now, leslieformayor.com, you will not only see my plan for housing, you will see vacant, blighted lots in Denver today and what we can transform them into when it comes to housing in not 3 years, but in fact in 4 to 6 months. But additionally, we can get people long-term housing. I mean, if we think, and short-term housing, and I think it has to be a combination. But if we think about what we're hearing today, we are missing the fact that we have to be compassionate about the people. Putting people in jail costs between $200 and $500 or $600 a day. As someone who's worked with the state budget, I know these numbers. I know that, in fact, instead, we can get people housed. 80 to 90% of people living on the streets in Denver today want to be housed. They want wraparound services, and we can provide that with city dollars and with the federal infrastructure dollars that are coming in today. We have hundreds of units proposed, thousands of units proposed right now on my website in over 60 lots that are vacant and owned by the city and county of Denver. We can do this now.
Thank you.